At first, Terrans thought they could negotiate with the Quen. The tall, gracious aliens seemed like good enough folks, with a deep respect for ecosystems and an innate sense of aesthetics. Their music was heavenly, one adjusted to human pitch. Their cities were the most perfect examples of egalitarian utopias, with crystal spires and hanging gardens. They were highly respected galactic citizens. Everything they touched became a thing of beauty. From a purely local perspective, though, they were also terrible neighbors. They put big glowing "no trespassing" signs everywhere they thought belonged to them, and their bold claims included 2/3 of the outer Orion Arm. Terrans lived in a small sector of the Orion Arm, nearly surrounded by Quen space. The Quen were also ruthless, and a handful of minor civilizations had been wiped out after provoking their wrath. The Bettles, a spacefaring civilization dominated by a warrior class, learned their lesson and proved the point by dying. They had large cannons, the Quen had larger cannons, and they were tuned to play an intricate symphony of doom as they atomized the Bettles. The Quen were designing insanely beautiful gunships, elegant battle cruisers, platinum-plated flagships. Being annihilated by these beings of pure beauty was, in a way, an honor. As much as Terrans enjoyed the seemingly infinite flow of Quen music, sculptures, fabrics, and sculpted fabrics that made music when worn, they also felt like the Quen were total asses for not sharing the mostly empty space between stars with their neighbors. It was no surprise that, eventually, the captain of a Terran trade ship decided that taking the long, winding, costly road around the Quen Empire just to sell single malt scotch to the Persians was no longer a viable option. He headed straight into Quen space. There, he did that Terran thing where you turn your rocket around, fly close to the upper atmosphere of a planet, and open the garbage disposal bays. On that evening of January 17th, 2258, Captain Jed Burgos mooned the Quen. This caused some friction at the Galactic Council, and unsurprisingly, the Terran envoy tried to downplay the incident. He suggested that a Terran fleet deliver 100 tons of the finest Carrara marble blocks to the Quen. He also humiliated himself by letting the members of the Quen delegation touch and stroke his hair. When the fleet of 15 Terran heavy haulers finished delivering the marble blocks to Quena Prime, the ships took off, then turned around and emptied their garbage disposal bays, somewhere between the first and the second moon of the Quen's homeworld. Completely disregarding the Terran High Council's directives, these proud Terran trade ship captains had just mooned the Quen again, this time between their two sacred moons, which was ironic in a very Terran way. The Terran High Council had a long history of solving crises caused by their fellow Terrans, usually due to rash and irrational behavior, by using efficient methods such as official gifts, bribes, political manipulation, more bribes, and diplomacy, sex bribes. This time, though, the only outcome, the unavoidable conclusion, was war. Thus, the Terran-Quen War had started, or, to be more precise, a bizarre phase of the conflict historians had named the Build-Up. Because the Quen knew they couldn't just fly a bunch of warships in Terran space and expect to surrender, they had to prepare their fleet. But the Terrans, being Terrans, wouldn't sit idle. An initial assessment of the Terran military found a total of 459 warships, but half of them were currently undergoing maintenance. Terrans of the 23rd century were not very warlike in general. Apart from the regular Space Marine task force, colonial gunships, and a handful of high-security escort cruisers, most human ships were lightly armed. They were traders and miners, and crafty business people, not a military society. This is precisely where Terrans had a rather unconventional approach. Most of their trade infrastructure could be weaponized. They had built the most efficient mining operations in the galaxy by using their famous Westinghouse Tesla mass drivers, which were high-precision electromagnetic catapults used to throw minerals extracted from asteroids towards orbital catch areas, where the minerals were smelted. Within 2 months, every single Terran transport ship was equipped with a repurposed mass driver. Within 5 months, Komatsu plasma arc cutters used for asteroid mining were also mounted on every ship in the Terran fleet, which was growing at an alarming rate from a Quen perspective. Over 5,000 transports, cruise ships, space casinos, and colonial buses could now engage Quen enemies from a distance. Every single tug, cargo ship, and trade ship were also equipped with high-energy laser smelters from the Exxon Rio Tinto mineral refineries. These lasers were medium-range, and they were deadly. The Terrans now had a fleet of 12,000 ships equipped with long-range EM slug guns, firing superheated depleted uranium and tungsten slugs. Medium-range lasers able to slice through any enemy ship like it's made of warm butter, and short-range plasma arc cutters that could cut holes in space stations and habitats to board them. The Quen tried to keep up. They were now caught in an arms race, and they knew they had superior warships, more maneuverable dogfighters, and much more powerful ion cannons. But they had a grand total of 750 ships, including the Emperor's personal fleet. They tried to delay the Terrans by calling for emergency talks, by making demands. They sounded very reasonable. Terran envoys had much fun going to cocktails and watching parades. Still, the humans were converting equipment. They were not building a single new ship or cannon, merely repurposing. Tiny Oort cloud planetoids were covered with a coating called Black 4.0, you can Google it, which was the darkest and least reflective substance in the known universe. Then, Boeing Space Industries' relativistic jet boosters were used to accelerate them to, well, relativistic speeds. Soon enough, the secret Quen observation ships, posted just outside our solar system, were being obliterated by stealthy, ultra-cool balls of ice coming from nowhere. After a year, the Quen had produced a grand total of 35 elegant, deadly, silvery, and terribly expensive warships. Meanwhile, humans had accumulated a grand total of 19,000 weapon platforms of all sorts, including the biggest slug gun ever created, using the ginormous mass driver from the UPS relativistic delivery platform orbiting Jupiter. This behemoth could accelerate a 100-ton slab of tungsten to 3% of the speed of light, precisely delivering it to a target area the size of Rhode Island, 3 light days away. Terran TV broadcasted the first test, in which the UPS gun delivered unimaginable destruction to a reddish planetoid in the Kuiper belt, Sedna, which was vaporized. The Quen Emperor was alarmed. He redirected most of the remaining industrial production towards the production of planetary defense systems. The Quen kept going for a little while, building a handful of slightly cheaper gunships over the course of the next few weeks. Nobody knows why or how they kept going, since this excessive war effort, for a war that had not even started, had already put an unbearable strain on their resources and caused irreversible damage to their economy. Cities were crumbling, citizens were rioting, and entire Quen worlds were seceding from the Empire to escape the madness. The Emperor simply vanished. Then, the Quen Empire just went bankrupt. It ceased to exist as a meaningful political entity. Terrans disbanded their enormous war fleet, all 23,454 ships, platforms, stations, and installations, and went back to the thing they loved the most: trade. And now, trade is more lucrative than ever, with the Quen stranglehold gone.